page 189. So we are going to go over yesterday's check. Hopefully you got that done. Which, or what, I should say, did you use for your common denominator? 12. So you're changing these into equivalent fractions over 12. 3 times what is 12? 3 times 4. So what do we have to do to the negative 10? Times 4. So we've got negative 40. 4 times what is 12? 3. So we have to multiply the 21 by 3, which gives us 63. Sharpen it. So now our problem is really negative 40 twelfths. I know the wall one always works better. Plus 63 twelfths. Remember, when we're adding and subtracting fractions, our bottom number always stays the same. So negative 40 plus 63, our signs are different, so we find the difference, not difference. Big minus little. 3, 2, so 23 twelfths. And my bigger number was positive, so my answer is positive. How many groups of 12 could I take out of 23? I could almost take 2, so 1 less than 2, right? So I just have 12, I'm sorry, 1. I was just saying 2. So we have 1 whole, which would be 12, and almost 2, so 1 less than another one, which would be 11 twelfths, right? 1 and 11 twelfths. All right, now we're going to add rational numbers when we have different forms. So here we have a fraction and a decimal. I know that I can easily change this into a tenth. So I know that's going to be a terminating decimal. It's going to end, right? So because the addends are written in different forms, you can first write them in the same form. The decimal form of negative 2/5 is a terminating decimal. So you can either write the addends as fractions or as decimals. So the method 1 would be to write both addends as decimals. The method 2 that we're going to look at is writing them both as fractions. So I can either say 2 divided by 5, or what I would do is I would make it into an equivalent fraction out of 10, because I know decimals work in tenths and hundredths and thousandths, right? So 5 times what is 10? 2. And 2 times 2 is 4. So this is actually negative 4/10. And I would write that with a 4 here, right? So I have negative 4/10 plus 2 and 3/10. My signs are different, so I actually have to find the difference. I'm going to go over here to the left of it. 2 and 3/10 minus 0.4 or 4/10. Can I take 4 from 3? No, I have to borrow from the ones place. The 2 becomes a 1. Now I have 13/10. So 13 minus 4 is 9. Bring my decimal straight down. 1 minus 0 is 1. My bigger number here was positive, so my answer is going to stay positive, 1 and 9/10. Now they're going to take it and go and write both addends as fractions. We're going to skip the animation and we're going to walk you through it here. So negative 2/5 plus 2 and 3/10. If you know how to say this decimal, you should know how to write this decimal. 2 and means 2 the whole number 2, 3/10, we would say here. So we really need to practice knowing our place value, right? So that we can read our decimals properly. It'll make it easier to write them as fractions. And then they found a common denominator and changed this into improper. So 2 times 10 is 20 plus 3. I always draw like I go in this nice circle here, counterclockwise. We multiply the whole number by the denominator, add it to the numerator. That's how many total pieces there are out of the 10. We keep the denominator the same. Now our signs are different, so we're finding the difference. 23 minus 4 is what? 23 minus 4. So I have to borrow. 13 minus 4 is 9. 1. Does this look somewhat familiar? This is 19. What's our denominator, though? Over 10. How many groups of 10 can I take out of 19? 1. If I take out 10, I'm left with how many? 9/10. Which then you could write as 1 and 9/10. These are the same, right? So the sum of -2/5 and 2 and 3/10 is 19/10 or 1 and 9/10. All right, so I want you to try here. Now, I noticed right away that this could change over to a decimal real quick, but you should also know what this is as a fraction. Yes. So you decide how you're going to do that and give that a go. I'll give you a couple minutes to try that one out. Do you like decimals better? Yes, the back by the calculators. Do you like decimals better? Do you like fractions better? We'll kind of go over both ways we would do that in just a couple minutes, but I want to negative if you have a positive interval. You'll be finding the difference. So the 3 is that's not good. Make that into a decimal. Or do you want to make that into a fraction? So, how do they do the same thing? Write it as 0.4 minus the first one is negative 7,500. Then we're gonna go to minus and then. So when we have 2 different signs, we find the difference between that. So here's a code. So we're going to take our big minus our small. So 0.75 minus 24. Got it once. You got it? Oh. Yeah, my giant one's probably not going to help you at the moment, but try not to pick at it. All right, let's look at a couple of ways we can do this. So maybe you noticed that we just changed 2/5 to a decimal, right? We changed it to 4/10. Just because it was negative doesn't really change it, right? It's just the opposite of it. So couldn't we use this as a decimal since we just figured that out? So we've got 4/10, right? Plus a negative 75 hundredths. Remember, this is our tenths place. This is our hundredths place. So I say this number, I say 75, and then I say the place value of my last number. So this was tenths, this is hundredths. So I'm going to say 75 hundredths. Hopefully you guys did a lot of back and forth between fractions and decimals last year, but if you didn't, you may need to go back and review. Remember in Google Classroom, under the classwork tab and under important information, there's a link to my YouTube channel. So there are some really great videos under the 6th grade playlists if you're struggling with fractions and decimals and those sort of things, okay? So they're usually fairly quick, but you can go through and take notes along with me. Maybe you have paper at home, maybe you have a notebook you can write in and keep track of that, especially if you're behind. You might have to put in a bit of extra work and some extra grit, or maybe in Trojan time, you can ask your teacher, hey, can I work on math today? And you could review those. Then you can come see me if you need help during Trojan time too. All right, so we have to know how to say decimals and it will help down the road. And we're going to come back to this because I'm going to go through and show you how I might do it with fractions as well. So my signs are different. I find the difference. So I'm going to rewrite this so it's vertical. I'm going to write my larger decimal minus my smaller decimal. And notice I'm lining up my decimal point, not my last number like I usually do when we're working with whole numbers. But if I line up my decimal point, I don't have anything here, but we know we can put in a 0 to hold that place, okay? So now we have to remember how to subtract. 5 minus 0 is 5. 7 minus 4 is 3. So we're going to bring down this decimal. Now, we found the difference, but we have to decide if it's positive or negative. So here are our two choices. Is our positive number bigger or is our negative number bigger? Our negative number was bigger, so our answer is going to be negative. Okay? How would I read this? Negative 35 hundredths. So again, I'm saying this number, so 35, and whatever the last number, whatever place it is in, that's what I'm reading as its place. So if I wanted to write this as a fraction, I would write negative 35 and then literally hundredths. So out of 100. And then I could simplify it as a fraction. What can I divide them both by? These are both multiples of what? 5. So whatever I do to the top, I have to do to the bottom. 7/25. 20th, thank you. I was like, that's not quite right. All right. 100 divided by 5 is not 25, it's 20. I just lost my mind for a second. All right, so now you may have done it the other way. You may have changed this into 4. How would I read this decimal? I would not read it as 0.4. You could read it as 40 hundredths, but it would be easier to read it as 4. What place value is the 4 in? The tenths. This is in the tenths place, so we would read it as 4/10. Lots of review in this one problem, right? So I would write it as quite literally 4/10 or 4/10, right? And that could even be simplified. That might make it a little bit easier. I don't know. We could leave it like that for now, though. You could write it as 2/5 too, for sure. So does anybody notice anything about 0.75? How does that relate to money? 75 cents. 75 cents is how many quarters? 3/4. What is actually the denominator when we say 3/4? 3/4. So another name for 3/4 would be 3/4 because there's 4 quarters in a dollar. So that's why you'll hear people say 1/4 and 1/4 interchangeably, right? Or 3/4 and 3/4 interchangeably. So those all mean the same thing. So you could either know this is 75 hundredths, like I told you we were going to come back to, and I can divide them both by what? What are they both multiples of? We were just talking about quarters, so we could divide them by 5, but then I'd have to divide them by 5 again. How many cents in a quarter? I could divide them by 25. If I divide them both by 25, I'm left with 3/4 or 3/4, right? So this is a decimal we should know what the fraction is of, but in case you didn't, you can still get there knowing what we know about how to change things into fractions. All right, so 4/10 minus 3/4. So we talked a lot about multiples and factors, right? So hopefully that's the packet you're turning in or have turned in. But I want you to be sure that you can figure out, sorry, I was thinking about something, if I screwed something up, what the multiples of these numbers are. So 10, 20, 30, 40. 10 should be easy, counting by 10, right? But what about 4s? 4, 8, 12, 16, 20. So 20 ends in a 0, so it's a multiple of 10, right? So can we change them into something out of 20? We know this is going to stay negative, so I'm just going to kind of bring it down like that. Is this making sense? 4/10 plus this, something out of 20. 10 times what is 20? 2. So what do I have to multiply the 4 by? 2 as well, right? 4 times what is 20? 5. So what do I have to multiply the 3 by? 5. What's 3 times 5? 15. So now we still have the difference, right? Our signs are different. We have a positive and a negative, so we have to find the difference. Which is bigger, 15 out of 20 or 8 out of 20? Which one's bigger? 15 is bigger than 8. So what is 15 minus 8? 7. We're going to go with 7. 15 minus 8 is 7. All right. Is it positive or negative? Remember, our denominator stays the same. Is it positive or negative, though? Negative. And this one was negative too. So you may have gotten negative 7/20. Now to go the other way, to change this into a decimal, instead of dividing this one, I would definitely make it out of 100. So how do I get from 20 to 100? Multiply by 5. Multiply by 5 to get 35 hundredths. So negative 35 hundredths I would write as negative 0.35. So you got to be able to go from one to the other and back again. I know it's a lot of review all in one, right? All right. So example 6, starting on page 90, we have to know how to add rational numbers. So they are, I'm sorry, yes, 190. Don't go back in time, please. When adding 3 or more rational numbers, you can do them in whatever order you want to. You might want to add your fractions, add your decimals, and then add them together. I don't know. So that's kind of what they're talking about here. So yeah, lots and lots of review and lots of practice. I think probably next week we might just go back to reviewing adding fractions in general. Changing fractions to decimals, all that stuff. I'm not sure. We'll have to play it by ear here and see what we need, right? My goal is always to try and give you what you need, not just shove things down your throat, though, in general, right? So they here combined, they changed this to 1 1/4. They changed this to 1 1/4. Remember, with a decimal, you need to know that that says and. So 1 1/4 would be 1 25/100, or 1 1/4, we would call this as well, right? So they changed this, but then they changed it right away into an improper fraction. Do you see the improper fraction? 1 times 4, so 4 parts of the 4 would make a whole. So they added that to the 1 to get 5/4, and then they just rewrote the problem. So the only step they didn't show was changing this to this. Then they changed everything to have a common denominator. So the most common multiple of this I don't know, she was supposed to be going to the office. Okay, yeah, I don't know. So the least common between 3, 4, and 8 is what? They gave it to us. So 4 times what is 24? 6. So 5 times 6 is 30. 3 times 8 is 24. So 1 times 8 is 8. 8 times 3 is 24. So 7 times 3 is 21. So that's a lot to change over, right? They wrote equivalent fractions for all of those. So think of all the things that we have to remember here. We have to go from a fraction to a decimal, or vice versa, right? We have to write equivalent fractions. And we have to remember to add fractions. And we also need to know how to go from improper to mixed number and back again. Because after we went from decimal to fraction here, we had to go to improper fraction. Yikes. So then they added what was on top using your integer rules. So we also have to remember our integer rules, adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers. So they had 3 things being added together. 2 of them were negative. So when we have same signs, they found the sum. So they combined these 2 negatives to get a bigger negative, which was 29, as you can see down here. And then their signs were different, so they found the difference, which is 30 minus 29, which is, of course, 1. All that to come up with the fact that the sum of 1 25/100 plus a negative 1/3 plus a negative 7/8 is 1 24th. Yikes, right? No, not right. So check your knowledge of this. So do you think it might be easier with these ones to go to, oh, you know what? We can't go to a decimal because what is special about 1/6? It's not terminating, right? It's a repeating decimal. So we've got to change these all to fractions rather. So how would I read 0.2 or 0.20? This would be 20 hundredths. This would be 2/10. So let's rewrite this all as fractions. Plus 2/10, or you might simplify to 1/5, plus 2 5/9. So we went from decimal to fraction. We're going to write equivalent fractions, but we actually need to go from mixed to improper, right? Feels like the window's open. Did you feel that? Yeah. That was weird. So remember, mixed to improper means we're taking the whole number times the denominator. What's 2 times 9? 18. Plus 5. What's 18 plus 5? 23. So some of us need to go back to addition and subtraction and multiplication and division. Also, do you see how math is continuously building? And I know it's really overwhelming. But I know you guys have grit too. So remember, our denominator stays the same, and I'm just copying down the rest of these fractions. 1/6. All right. Well, do you want to try and add 2 of these and then another one maybe? You want to go home? I'm sorry. So what would a common denominator be between 6 and 9? 6, 12, 18, and then 9, 18. They both have 18 in common. So if we're changing this into 18, we would have -3. If we were changing this into 18, 9 times 2, so 46 18ths. That's kind of a big number, right? Now, our signs are different. What's 46 minus 3? So we have 43 18ths, but we have to add 2/10 to it. So we have to come up with a multiple of 18 that ends in 0, right? Are there any, look at your multiplication table. Are there any before 180, which would be 18 times 10? So I'm going to follow my 18 in my planner on page 36. I see 90. Beautiful. So that's only 5 times. That will be easier. So out of 90, we just said it was 5 times. So 43 times 5. I'm guessing you're going to want your calculators, guys. What's 43 times 5? Well, 44 times 5 would be 220. So 215. I don't know, try it. I could be wrong. Don't know if this could. All right. So 215 90ths. How do I change the 10 to 90ths? Multiply by 9. So 2 times 9 is 18. Ew, this is huge. Wait, it was positive, right? Yeah. Not appropriate. All right, 18 and 215. 5 and 8 is 13. Carry the 1, so 3. 233 over 90. And now here we are going back to a mixed number, right? How many groups of 90 can I take out? 2 would be 180. Is that enough? 233 minus 180, 353. 2 and 53 90ths. I don't think that's simplifiable. I was looking under 3, but 3 goes into 54, so that's pretty crazy, right? So now you can do the same thing. I think this is easier for you, maybe, because we know how to change fractions to decimals. We just reviewed that it's always numerator divided by denominator gives us a decimal, right? So looking at page 191, those times when we have terminating decimals, we're just going to change them to decimals, plug them into our calculator, or line up our decimals, and voila. Voila. Right? This is 6/10, so 26.6. 1/2 can be changed into 5/10, so -3.5. And you just plug that into your calculator and out pops 141.9 or 141 and 9/10. It's important for you to know how to read these things. Okay, so check this one out. Try this. We should know that 4/8 is 1/2, and we should know that 1/2 is equal to 0.5. Right? So this would be -66.5. 3/4 is the same as 3/4. We know 3/4 is how many cents? 75 cents. So 172.75. We should also know that we should know 3/4 is 75 cents, and we should know that 1/4 is 25 cents, right? So a few we should definitely know. Then, so use this in place of that, use this in place of that. After 2 hours, these are all her changes, how much it changed in the first hour, between the next hour, the next hour. So you need to combine those. So in your calculator, if you don't have one, I would probably want one by now. 226 and 86/100ths plus a -66 and 5/10 plus a -15 and 32/100ths plus 172 and 75/100ths. So they want to know what her altitude is. She goes up, then she goes down, then she goes down some more, and then she goes back up. So they want to know what her new altitude is. This is all calculatable. Or you can combine your positives. So you can add 172 and 75/100ths to this, since you guys don't want to get a calculator. Bring down your decimal. Then you can also combine these two because their signs are the same. So you would find the sum. So if I lined up 32 with that, 15 and 32/100ths with that, so here it's getting more negative. So we're actually subtracting. So we have now 391 and 61/100ths minus 81 and 82/100ths, or plus a negative, which is the same as subtracting. 81.82. I have to borrow. Bring down your decimal. 317 and 79 hundredths.
You figured that out as you did that.
I may have been a little faster than you. All right. I know we don't really have time to go on. So we're going to have to do some major review on Tuesday because I won't see you until Tuesday. Not towards people.
I say double and give it to the next person.
So we got to do the opposite. We have to write, remember how to add. Whew. Hang in there, guys.